this is going to be the best episode yet. So
there you go.
Let's start off with you, right? So give us a little background, name, the whole nine.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm Carlos Gonzalez. I'm a strength and conditioning coach for the Tampa Bay Rays. They're AA affiliate in Montgomery, Alabama, the Montgomery Biscuits. Got a bachelor's and master's in exercise science from Middle Tennessee State University. After undergrad, I was a commissioned officer in the Air Force. I was a security forces officer in Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. And I currently reside in Tennessee, just south of Nashville and Murfreesboro. Got a wife, 2 kids, and just living the dream, actually.
That's awesome. And then what's your official, is it the strength and conditioning coach for the Go Biscuits, or?
It's I'm technically an assistant strength and conditioning coach for the Rays. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And that makes sense how it just kind of goes out. And that's so fascinating to go from, Middle Tennessee, Air Force, everything, and to be back in Tennessee like that. Like, life is just such a beautiful thing. So then how did you go from being in the Air Force again? Thank you for your service, to, being a coach now as the assistant strength coach for the Tampa Bay Rays?
Oh man, that's a great question. A lot of stuff had to happen in between. So just coming back, I knew that I wanted to be in this field. Obviously, being an exercise science major, I knew that in some capacity, I wanted to be in this field, work with athletes somehow, some way. But when I was in grad school, because I have a track background, so I ran in high school and college for the Air Force. So that track background, when I was applying for places, really piqued the interest of TC Troncal, the former director of strength and conditioning with the Rays. He had a track background. So it was really just dumb luck, like having a track background and just because I had no experience in baseball. Right. And he liked that, that I knew about running mechanics. He liked the idea of that. He wanted someone on staff with that kind of expertise. So he took a chance on me, and I've been here ever since.
That's awesome. I mean, your story is a testament to the life pivot, right? Like you need to be close enough to the table at any given point for somebody to be able to be like you. And then you were like, I'm ready. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to go.
Exactly. Because you never know when you're going to get the opportunity.
Right.
And then it may not be an opportunity that you want. So to always be ready. And even if you're not ready and you're given an opportunity to be ready, get ready. So that I was fortunate to have that opportunity and make the most of it.
No, that's great advice, right? Always be ready. So, and that's awesome. So then how do you motivate, what motivates you as a coach, knowing that your background in exercise science as a track athlete, former Air Force officer, what kind of motivates you now, given all of that?
Well, the biggest thing, what motivates me in life is my wife and kids, because I want to give them the best version of myself. So in my profession, what motivates me is my athletes, because I need to give them the best version of Coach Gonzalez as I possibly can. So being able to give them that and constantly be on my game is what motivates me. And then the second part is seeing my athletes grow, being able to, from just coming in as rookies to now they're in the big leagues, to be able to see that growth, whether it was with me or with someone else, seeing them develop as human beings, as young men into grown men, being able to see that development really motivates me to continue working at what I do.
That's awesome. Because that's one of those things in life where you're looking at, overnight successes, but when you really are, that's because you're looking so far zoomed out at that line of life, which is never linear, right? It's just that up and down, pitfalls, mountains kind of thing. And you're able to watch over time that growth. I have chills right now. That's so cool to see that and how long you've been with the Rays, and especially with the success they had last season. Granted, unfortunately, there wasn't any minor league play, but still, you got boys up there that are doing their thing that you were able to have, connection with over the years.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic because, let me see, I had 5 or 6 guys that were with me last year in AA. The cool thing about baseball is we play 140 games in 152 days. So there's not any days off. And when you hear about grinding, you don't really understand the grind until you're in it, when you're taking 6-hour bus rides in the middle of the night, playing every single day, double headers, early games, all that stuff. So you get to connect with these players on a real personal level. And then when you see them succeed at the highest level, it's like, this is the best. It's the best. So it is, watching them on that stage was absolutely phenomenal. It was so fun to watch.
No, that was awesome. And like, even though like they ultimately went to the Dodgers, like still just like you said, being on that stage within a year span with everything that's going on in the world is, again, like I'm getting emotional, and I wasn't even in your shoes. That's so cool. And then you were saying, really what drives you is that growth of watching players' development over time, and then being the best version of you for your athletes. How do you motivate your staff? Like where do you go in, like, are we looking at like a habit loop? Kind of talk me through that process a little bit.
That's a good question. Cause I've been around a lot of sports coaches, and they're pretty motivated themselves. Right. So it's really hard as a strength and conditioning coach to motivate a hitting coach or whatever, because they're already, it's like the cream of the crop. Like, you got to know your stuff. But if my level of expertise is up here and they see it and they want to match it because they see that I'm a professional or I'm doing certain things, then that's not really for me, because I don't do it for them. I do it for my athletes. I do it for myself. So that's just an added bonus. But to say that I motivate them, we motivate each other just because we have to. We all have off days. We all have not off days, like off days, like we're not feeling it coming into the field.
Right. Yeah.
And so we do a good job of keeping each other accountable and stuff like that. But it's nothing. They're already motivated. If they're closer to the big leagues than I am. They're like, hey, they can get a call and be with like another team as a hitting coach. So they know that they have to be on their game. So they're self-motivated. And that's the beauty of what we do, is like, there's a lot of coaches and a lot of people in our organization that are really just striving to be the best. And that's why I think our organization is so good.
Look at the numbers, right? In terms of like how much the ball club is able to spend versus other teams in the league, and the output performance, like you said, speaks to that culture piece of exactly what you're talking about. And I know it's thrown on like Silicon Valley and, being in the Army, and you being formerly in the Air Force, right? When you're in a really good team, that average 5 people you spend the most time around, you naturally just see the water kind of rise, right? And if you don't, you're out of the team, right? You're gonna sink. So that's super cool.
Yeah, what's that saying? A rising tide lifts all ships. So
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's definitely a good atmosphere.
Very cool. And so you were talking about, being self-motivated. What would you say your style of coaching is when you're talking to the athletes?
Yeah, it's really consultative, to be honest with you. I'm working with a little bit older guys. Definitely not a drill sergeant. Definitely not dictatorship. They're grown men. They've been in our organization for a long time. And it really speaks to like getting them to buy in as well. Because if you give them ownership of the program, they're more willing to do it, and do it with the intent that I want them to do it with. So I have an idea of where I want them to go, but there's lots of paths and lots of ways to get there. And I give them that latitude to really make it their own, because each athlete is different and they require different things and they like different things. So being able to give them some of that ownership, really, that's kind of my coaching style, because I hate just coming down and like, hey, you only gave me 4 reps. I need 5. Well, what's that last rep really going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. And like you're saying, there's a time and a place, right? Sometimes you need to kind of push in one direction or the other, especially, again, looking outside in at the major league level. How do you combat what some would term like the made it mentality? Like, for all these years, from T-ball all the way up, you have people that are trying to get there, just to get to the stage. And then they get there. And then it's like, well, I'm here. I'm good. How do you deal with something like that?
That's a very good question. And me and the director right now, Pat Trainer, me and him had this discussion, and the the complacency of a big league player is kind of subdued because, like we say, there's a lot of dogs coming up through the system, and we have a lot of really young talent right now in our minor league system that can be big leaguers. So like there's not a lot of time to be complacent because they know there's so much talent behind them and they see it all the time. They were one of those talents. Now, if it was another organization, we'd be having a different discussion because, you know, they get free agents and you've made it, you know, but with us and all the minor leaguers that we pump into the big leagues and that have a lot of success, you can't rest on your laurels in our system.
Yeah. How many people would you say are currently in the system?
I'll say between 150, 175 players.
Oh, wow. And then then what do you feel then on each team? Because if you want to just kind of go into like the different levels of ball.
Yeah. So you have AAA, AA, Advanced A, Low A, and then you have some rookie ball teams and some academy teams. So for the upper levels, the 4 upper levels, there's 25-man roster. And then for the rookie ball levels, I think you can have 30 or 35 players. And then at the academy, I think they're like 30, 35 as well. So there's a lot of players in our system.
Wow. And it changes every year, right? Like you're saying, because you send people up to the big league. So you're constantly getting new players.
Yep. Because there's a draft every June. So however many rounds there is, 30 something rounds, players coming in. We make cuts throughout the season. We make cuts in spring training. So it's just a matter of being able to stay on the team.
On average, how often are you working with a specific athlete? Just a season or more?
In the upper levels, I've probably it's weird because I went from Advanced A to AA, and I had one guy, I've had him for the past 3 years.
Okay.
And he's AA twice. So sometimes they can stay at one level for 2 or 3 years, but after that, then, hey, either you need to move up or we need to get somebody else. So I would say maybe a year or two at one.
And so then how is your coaching style, given that you're working? I mean, you come from the Air Force and the Army, how we have it, like you're changing duty stations every 2 to 3 years. Now you're changing every year to 2 years, completely. How does that change, or has it not changed your coaching style over your time with the ball club?
Yeah, it changes because as you get to the older guys, you have to treat them more like adults. At the younger levels, they come from all over the place. So you have to be more direct. Hey, this isn't a democracy. Like, this is what you got to do because we're trying to set a culture with them at the young age. That culture has already been set in and already been in place by the time they get to me. So now they know what they have to do. Now it's like, hey, all right, this is what we got. How are you feeling today? Whereas with the younger guys, they're going to try to get out of everything. So, hey, this is what you got to do. But the older guys, they know their bodies. They're playing more games. This is a little bit harder. So now we can be like, all right, how are you feeling? What can you give me? Let's do this work.
That culture is such a critical piece. And you talked about essentially being, fostering that culture because you already kind of know what it is. Where does that culture come from?
It should come from the strength coaches, and it should come from Pat Trainer, our director.
Yeah,
he sets the culture of our strength staff. And then as the staff, we kind of amplify it at our affiliate. Yeah, because once we're in the affiliate, I mean, we spend 30-something days in Port Charlotte for our spring training facility. And as soon as we break camp, I don't see another strength coach all year. And it's just me and my 25 guys, or the guys that get bumped up, or the guys that move up. And it's my show. And Pat has given us all the strength coaches the autonomy to coach them as we feel they need. So it's pretty good because I think we got a good culture set up right now.
That's evident. I'm just talking to you over these last couple of minutes. It just oozes out of you, which is really cool to see, right? Because you and I both know that doesn't happen. That's more of a rarity than it is like the norm, unfortunately. So going through the culture, you're getting it from Pat Trainer. Do you guys sit down and have like meetings before camp? Like, hey, this is kind of what we're focused on this year. This is the direction that the organization is going. Like, really peel back the onion a little bit as much as possible. How you determine that culture piece. I think that's critical.
Yeah, Pat does a really good job of keeping us involved, letting us know kind of what he wants out of the program. So, whether it was one year where we're like, at the beginning of spring training, we want to have a more emphasis on strength building because we felt these guys were a little weak. Whether the next year we was like, okay, I think running mechanics is a big deal. They're strong enough, now we need to focus on this. Whereas this year we're working a lot more with, the hitting coaches and the pitching coaches to be more, have that more transferable strength from the weight room onto the field. So we get that all the time before the season starts, after the season's ended. He does a really good job of like keeping us engaged. We contact our players throughout the whole off season, making sure that they're working towards the goals that we've set for them. We do a lot of communicating, which is really good. I mean, obviously, as strength coaches, or as humans, we want more communication. Like, I need more feedback if I'm doing good. I need more feedback if I need to change. But I think he does the best that he can do with as many moving parts as there are. So I think he does a good job communicating with us.
No, that's awesome. And again, like, you just keep dropping nuggets right now. Communication builds trust. Trust builds communication, right? It's very simple. And having only 30 days where you're all together, and then it's like, see at the end of the season, which is in and of itself such a grind, like you were saying. And that's how that ownership that you talked about early on is able to seep down from, the organization through the players, right? Because you have ownership from Pat, you're able to then give it to your players. And it's this like really cool symbiotic relationship. And I really like how you touched upon, you're starting to integrate, right? Cross-domain, essentially. I'm going to call them functional areas, where it's not siloed strength and hitting, it's strength and hitting, right? And because then you're starting to look at, what you do might not jive with, the hitting coach or whatever. So being able to have that kind of communication, again, you're going, vertically, horizontally, all over the place.
Oh yeah. And it's beautiful. And the hitting coaches, the pitching coaches, they've been very open to it. And I'll sit in the cages, and we've built new cages, and the sports science team, like, that's one thing I really, really enjoy about the Rays organization is they do a really good job of bringing everybody in. And then once they're in, now we can communicate. So we got really good technology in the cages for the sports science guys. The hitting coaches got cameras all over the place. And now the strength coaches can come in there, look at the different, the force plate numbers and see what that means. Because it may mean something different to a hitting coach than it does to a sports science guy, than it does to a strength coach. And all of us having access to all of those numbers only benefits the players. So it's really cool how we got it set up.
That is such a rarity. And again, I'm going to keep going back to it, right? Because I'm just in awe of what you guys are doing over there at the Rays organization, right? Everyone has that buy-in, which then leads to this like shared language, right? Like you said, you might see something, given a term, like a hitting percentage, where it's like, oh, this means like they're overly recovered. But to, the hitting coach, it means something different. And like, maybe they have an impingement in like their shoulder and they need to open that up through mobility and stuff that you're doing. And that dialogue allows for you to go so much deeper, right? You're no longer living on the surface. You're like subsurface. So you're really going to like the core root of the problem and treating like the causes as opposed to the symptoms.
Oh yeah. And that's huge. Cause like one of the biggest drawbacks in medicine in general, and not just strength coaches, is like we want the quick fix. And sometimes that quick fix is not really what you need. You need to get in there and find that cause. What's causing that so we can fix it? The glutes aren't firing up. Oh, okay, we'll just do a box squat. Well, if their pelvis ain't really aligned or they have some impingement in the hips, like maybe they can't get it. Maybe it's not firing because something else is taking over. We need to figure that out first. So yeah, getting to the root cause of why a hitter's not hitting or not getting into his glutes or getting quad dominant. Like we need to know why that's happening. And I think we do a pretty good job of that right now.
Systems of systems, like you said, and that's what separates good from like extraordinary. And again, I can talk about it all day long, but it's actually shown like what you were able to do, you and the team and the organization were able to do last season is a testament to everything we've already talked about. So then let's look at the reverse side, right? You say you're not in an organization like you're talking about where there's that cross domain among functional areas, hitting, pitching, strength, just to name a few. How do you handle an athlete who's coming into the organization and hasn't really been exposed to the training methods that you use or is using something that you might almost fundamentally disagree with, but that player is just so deeply rooted in that for whatever reason?
Oh, that's a good question. I've handled this a few different times with a few different players that have different philosophies coming in from trainers that they work with in the off season and stuff. And it's being able to, if they trust you and they trust that you care about them as a human being and not just as an athlete that can do something for you or for the organization, but truly as a human being, they'll listen to you. Now, they may not agree with you, but I feel like regardless of philosophy, there's somewhere in the middle that we can meet, that we can both agree on works. And it's just finding that compromise with these athletes, because at the end of the day, it's the player's career and he's got to make the decision for himself. Now, I want to lead him there because obviously we have the experience and the expertise, but ultimately this is his career. And I have to document it if he doesn't. Be like, hey, Pat, I've tried everything I can. Like, I've done X, Y, Z. I've said, hey, and then he'll see, let him decide. But it's tough because there are so many training philosophies out there, because there are so many different things that work. And we need to be able to compromise on something so that we can make it through 140 games. Because at the end of the day, somebody ain't gonna make it. And I got a 2-year contract on 2-year contract on 2-year contract. So I'm just saying, I'm still gonna be here.
Yeah, no, that's a critical point, right? And you've already touched on this, right? That trust piece is so critical. And having a new player come in the organization that might have come up in a different way or different training philosophies, how are you able to really, where do you really feel, how do you know that you've broken through?
When they stop asking questions, because I want my athletes to always ask questions, but it's when those questions change from why do I have to do this? When they go from whys to what else can I do on top of this? Like, how else can we do this? Like, once they start getting into the meat and potatoes of why they're doing what they're doing without asking, why do I have to do this? Then I know I've really broken through. And then sometimes the guys that ask a lot of questions that would give me half effort, once they stop asking questions and start giving me the effort goes up without asking any questions, I know I've got them, and I've got them forever. So it's really cool because it happens at different times for different athletes. Like, one guy will buy in automatically. We just connect our personalities. Sometimes the personalities are really different and we butt heads. And then over time, he sees that I'm consistent. I am who I am today, as I am tomorrow, as I am the next day. And them seeing that they can trust me in that finally breaks down those walls, because maybe, I don't know, maybe he had a bad experience with the strength coach or coaches that took advantages of them, or coaches that just wanted to ride their success.
Right.
Like they see that I'm here for you because I don't know if you know this or not, but strength coaches aren't famous. Like I'm not going to be famous because of you. Like you're going to be famous,
right.
And that's great. And I want that for you, but I'm doing this because I love it. So
yeah, I think the most famous strength coach would probably be like Louis out of West Side, you know?
yeah.
No, and that again, right? Like you said, the questioning, you can tell by the questions that are being asked when someone takes personal accountability.
Yep.
And that's when you're able to break, like you said, you're able to break through and see like, I can trust you, you trust me, like, and that relationship really just goes to a whole nother level.
Oh yeah. And you see it happening. Like one day, like you're ready for a battle. Going in, you know this guy's coming in, you're ready for that battle, and then all of a sudden you're like, hold on, that's not how that was supposed to go, but I'll take it. Maybe he doesn't want to fight today, and then the next day you're like, hold on, I think I got him. Like I think we're connected, and it's a beautiful thing because it doesn't just make my life easier, it makes the other athletes' lives easier because now I don't have to spend so much time fighting this one guy while all these other guys aren't getting the attention that they need. Because there's 25 guys and they all need something at some point. So being able to not have to fight those battles on a regular basis allows me the time to like really spread my attention to everybody and give everybody a little bit of love.
Yeah. And that's a common leadership fallacy, right? Like you spend 90% of your time on 10% of the people, right? And you're like you said, you want to give love to everybody, but you really have to like focus on. And then do you also look to see who you can leverage within the team? So sometimes it might not just be like a one-on-one interaction with you and the athlete, right? Like you might lean over to someone else.
Me and Pat, we have this discussion all the time, and we call it having juice. So we see players that have juice with the team. Like they have a little bit more influence, good or bad, than other players. Being able to get that guy that's got juice and get them on your side as quickly as possible. Because if you don't, it's a tough season. It's a long season. But if you get that guy that's got juice, you leverage him and his leadership and the juice that he's got with the other players to your advantage as much as you can. And if they're bought in, man, life's a breeze. Life's a breeze because now everybody falls in the line. Everybody does what they have to do because that guy that's got juice, he's leveraged on your side. So it's nice.
Now I know what you're going with the juice, but let's dive in. Like, what are those intangibles? How do you know somebody's got juice and you know it's not something else? How can you tell that?
That's a good question. It's personality. It's the energy that they have when they walk in a room, whether it's confidence, whether it's cockiness, whether it's it may not be a leadership thing. They may not be the leader, but there's that energy about them when they walk into a room, when they're in warm-up lines, when they're running, everybody's got their eyes on them. And you just know. It may be the most outspoken guy, but it may not be. It may be a quiet guy that when he talks, everybody listens. And he may not be the best player either. It's so weird because it's so hard to describe because you know it when you see it, but you don't know why you know it. But you feel that energy once they're around you. You're like, damn, yeah, that guy's got it. I need to get him. And it's so hard to explain.
No, that's very interesting, right? Because like you said, it's not like you notice it a day or two in. It's the moment you meet that person, that aura, that presence, that energy is just so forthcoming. Mm-hmm. People are, you can't help but notice it. Like you get, like you said, we've talked a couple different things. Like you get the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. You're constantly looking, where is Carlos? Where, like, I'm doing my thing, but I need to know where he's at because he's the doc. Like he's sitting at the head of the table, you know, like, and like you said, it's not it's not the MVP always, right? It could be the person who struggles on the field, but everyone just rallies around.
Oh, and they love that guy. Or they may not even love him, but they listen to him. And it's weird. It's weird because it may be a guy that most people just, he's got an abrasive personality, but he's the guy that steers the ship. And it's frustrating when he's not on your side and he's using it for the wrong things. But it's so satisfying when you finally shift them to the right side, to like the good side, where he's actually making good decisions. And you're like, yes, like this is what I've been waiting for. This is what I work for. You like the easy coached athletes, the ones that listen to everything you say. You can tell they're going to give you everything they got every single time. You live like those are the everyday guys. You love them, but you live for those really hard guys that finally turn it around and finally see what you've been telling them, and it materializes for them, and now they're bought in all the way. And now you got a guy with juice on your side.
Right. No, I love it. Right. So you talked about, right. You work and you constantly crave those everyday athletes, not everyday athletes, but those athletes that are coming to the table pretty quickly. But where you're iron sharpens iron, as they say, that's where you focus on those like hard athletes, and you're able to leverage them to your side. That's incredible. Speaking of iron versus iron, how are you learning like continuing education? Like what books, podcasts, seminars, where are you pulling sources of information and, all these different things to like keep showing up every day?
There's the beautiful thing about strength and conditioning coaches is we look at issues and we try to solve them, right? Because we know athletes are completely different. So I love the way the heavyweights in our industry are really good at doing that. Like you got Cal Dietz with the triphasic method and the reflexive performance resets. You got Dan Pfaff down in Altus and all of the continuing education that they have. Chris Corfus and Tony Holler with the track and field consortium seminars. You got Pat Davidson, who's very unorthodox. I wouldn't recommend going if you're sensitive, but he biomechanically insightful and perspective on movements and how they can be applied practically. Like he's really good at that. Just Fly Sports with Joel Smith. That podcast is really good. Perry Nicholson and the Stop Chasing Pain podcast is really good. He's doing a lot of really good stuff with the lymphatic system. And like, there's so many people out there doing so many really good things that, I try to pick from everywhere. And me and Pat, we have these discussions all the time. Like when you start searching something, especially if you're really inquisitive and you find something that you don't know, well, you go find out what that is. I don't know what that is. And then in looking at that, you find something else that you don't know. So you chase that. And then you find, so you, all of a sudden you're chasing this rabbit hole of stuff that you never knew. And you don't even know how you got there. But now you know all of this other new stuff that you didn't formerly know. So I just love learning, and I'll find it from wherever. And sometimes I do it on accident.
I've been peeping your bookshelf the entire time, so not to worry, right? And that goes to, breadth versus depth, right? And you can have both. Now, you mentioned, the list you gave is just all stars, right? Like absolute rock stars. Where do you look outside the strength community?
Ooh, that's a good question. There's a lot of, I love being in the military because it instilled in me a lot of leadership, ownership type qualities, right? So I still look to the military. Like my dad was in the military. My mom was in the military. My stepdad was in the military. My father-in-law was in the military. I got a whole bunch of uncles that were in the military. So leadership and ownership type books are great, are phenomenal. I'm currently reading this book on the name eludes me, but it was about the All Blacks of the Netherlands
Yes.
rugby team.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes. So really good book. Really
Yep.
good book. A lot of really good ideas in there, and just leadership books. I mean, they can be by well-known authors or not well-known authors, but as long as I got a nugget, if I can get something out of a book, then I'll read it. Atomic Habits was a good book. Um, Anywhere, anybody, anytime. So Josh, one of our mental skills coaches, I talk to him on a regular basis, and he's giving me a long list of books to read. I've read them all. He's like, hey, you trying to take my job? And I'm like, no, I just want to learn more. I need to know more. I need to know more. And it doesn't always have to be our field. And It's one of those things that sometimes we're so involved in this field that sometimes you need a break, but I still want to learn. So what else am I going to learn? Whether they're social activist books, whether it's political books, whether it's professional development, as far as leadership books, I like it all. And if anyone's got a recommendation, I'll go read it. Even if I think I know what it's about, like the Atomic Habits. I thought I was doing a lot of those, but there was a few little nuggets in there that I was like, you know what? I could change that. Let me go ahead and do it. So, and that's just what learning is about. That's what, for me, being a professional is all about, is constantly growing and doing better than you were.
Yeah. Be better than yesterday, right?
Exactly. That's all we can ask for.
I love it. Legacy, James Kerr.
Yes, that's what it is. Very good book. Very good book.
No, I agree, right? And like you said, you're taking all these different elements from all over the place, right? Because you're the first, Carlos, to do what you're doing, right? So you're going to do the best that you can, and you're pulling, what can design teach me in the golden ratio, right? Which is, it kind of looks like a shoehorn about like biomechanics in an athlete, right? And that's something like, if you're asking the question, you don't know if somebody else has asked it, but you're pulling from people who have done other things and kind of mashing things together.
Oh yeah. And it's, man, the different podcasts that I listen to are just so off the wall. And there's so many brilliant people out there. Yeah. Like, not in our field, completely different, whether they're engineers. My wife's an engineer, her sister's an engineer. And some of the conversations I have with them about the way they do business triggers some ideas in my head. Like, you know what? I hadn't considered that kind of thought process. And then I start thinking about that. But I mean, statisticians, all over the place. Like I was reading this book, Power versus Force, and it's about it's this, I think he's an astrologist, and being able, because there's so many people on this earth, and we all have talents in some regard, right? You can learn something from somebody, whether you think so or not. And it may be relevant to you now, or it may be relevant to you 5 years down the road, and you may remember it in a situation. So I try to keep an open mind about who I'm listening to, what I'm reading, and just take it with a grain of salt. And if I can use it, I can use it. If I can't at that moment, maybe later.
Right. And there's a selfish piece to that too. I'll say this, and then you tell me if you agree or not. By having this plethora of information to pull from, it makes you a better communicator, right? Because you're able to take these ideas and really kind of form and mold them to be able to present, like, hey, there's this analogy, or hey, there's this way of doing it. Do you understand this story? And then it relates to, like you said, moving a hip impingement. And it allows you to like really be more like a better communicator at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because just think about it, because it's funny, because every analogy I use is about the strength and conditioning world. So if I'm talking about a real world situation, I always bring, if, reps and sets, yada, yada, yada. But this is a real world strength and conditioning analogy, because having that breath, maybe this guy doesn't understand the cue that you have for a simple squat. So now I have to break out several other cues, and that goes into what we do as a profession. Like, how many ways can I say the same thing? Because people they may not understand at the same level you do, or they may look at things a little bit different than you do. but you still know you got to get that done. So how many different ways can I say the same thing or connect to people a certain way? So I'm speaking their language so that they feel comfortable listening to me. So it is a little bit selfish. And it's a little bit like, hey, I want to be able to have that ability, all these arrows in my quiver to use in case I need to. Yeah, so I think it is selfish, but I love it.
Right, me too. Right, because you don't know, you might be getting somebody from Nebraska that is farmed their entire life, and you're like, hey, it's like when you cut corn in the summer, and it's like, I know how to do that. Yeah,
exactly.
No, that's awesome. So talking about this, right, and getting all these different information, how, as the industry is moving forward, how do we continue to push that needle to work and establish strength and conditioning at that next level? What is next? Like moving in that direction instead of regressing. Not saying that we are.
Yeah, we need to do a better job of integrating ourselves in sports. Like, just like we talked about, we live, our weight room is a silo. And we hope that what we do transfers. And it may not. And we need to figure out how much of that is transferable to the field, to the sport, and how much is not. So we need to not pound our chest and be like, oh yeah, this is bigger, stronger, faster. He got a 500-pound squat. Well, did that make him a better athlete? Did that make him more durable? What did that do? That didn't help him on the field. So we need to find stuff that's more transferable to sport. And we need to do a better job of integrating into the other sports coaches so that we're really connected to them and understanding what they want from that athlete as well, and not just what we see the athlete needs on the field. Because an athlete, we could be like, hey, this guy, if he's a football player, needs to be able to run better routes. And we think we need to do more eccentric work because he's not lowering his center of gravity at the cuts. And if we do that, that'll make him a better route runner. But the wide receivers coach is thinking, no, I need him to do this to be a better route runner. And it may be something completely different. Like, yeah, we may need to work a little bit more eccentric loads, but we need to be listening to what the coaches want out of these athletes as well and be integrated. And I don't think we do as good a job as we need to be integrated.
Right. It's being that interpreter, that sports interpreter, of being that connective tissue among the different coaching staffs that ties everything together.
Yes. And then to piggyback on top of that is I would like to see us more involved in scouting and recruiting, because we can see from a biomechanical standpoint how athletes move and how well those athletes can be inside of our program.
Yeah.
Right. So I think how Dietz does like a lactate blood testing for his recruits to see if they have an ability to withstand certain lactate thresholds. That's phenomenal for hockey players. Okay, what kind of measure can we use for baseball players? What kind of measure can we use for football players? What test is out there that we can do to help find better athletes, not just that look good, but that move good, and that inside are good, can be able to withstand the amount of work we're going to demand of them. So being able to do that, I think if we're able to do those things, I think that'll move our profession forward.
That's awesome. And again, it goes back to what you were just talking about maybe like 10 minutes ago. You're exploring all these different areas outside of strength and conditioning to be able to talk those languages in those circles. Right. And you don't have to say everything, but you can at least say, I recognize this. I recognize A and B are connected. Let's talk about it. And people were like, what? Okay. That makes sense. Given where you are, again, career's not over, still doing your thing. Is there anything you would have changed in your career?
That's a good question, because you think about that all the time. Like, man, I wish I would have learned this sooner. I wish I would have interned here or done this sooner, but like, to be honest, I'm happy with where I'm at. Would I like to be further along? We all would. But like everything that's happened has happened to me for a reason to be right here, to know what I know right now and to move that forward. So yeah, would I have wanted to learn certain things sooner? Yeah, but like, I don't think I would change anything right now because I'm happy with where I'm at.
That's so powerful, right? Meeting yourself where you are, right? And the other piece of it is that consistency that you've talked about throughout this entire conversation, right? Because that's eventually going to lead to exponential growth. Right? I don't care who you are. It's mathematically going to happen, right? Consistency every day just leads to this giant upward curve.
Oh yeah, and being consistent. I respect consistency so much because even if you're a bad person, I know what to expect. But don't give me somebody one day and somebody else the next day. So I try to be consistent when I'm dealing with people, when I'm dealing with my wife, when I'm dealing with my kids, when I'm dealing with myself. I need to be that same guy. And that consistency has led me to right here. And I feel like my trajectory is pretty good right now. So I can't complain about that.
That's got to stem from your time in the military too, in the Air Force, right? Because you do battle drills and different things the exact same way every time, because you know when things hit the fan, you need to be able to do your job. And you need to know that the person on your left and your right are also going to do your job.
Exactly.
Or their job.
Yeah. And if they're not, then you can't trust them. And if I'm not doing my job, you can't trust me. So I'm always man my post and I'm always be there. So that's how I look at it.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I will always man my post. Like, powerful words. Speaking of that, right? Again, I've gotten pages of notes. What would you say to someone coming into the game, right? Someone that's coming, or a rising strength coach?
I think about this all the time. And I actually did a meeting with one of my colleagues, former colleagues, and I talked to him and his staff. And there's so much information out there to be had. But if you're a rising strength coach, I would say don't do it for the glory. Because if you think about it, whenever someone makes it, they never mention their strength coach. So you're not going to get a lot of praise for the amount of work you're going to put into this. And you're going to put in a lot of work if you really want to be successful. So I would say try to find the best internships that you can. Like, they're all over the place. There's really good strength and conditioning coaches all over the place. And don't be shy. One of the best strength coaches I know, he was with us about a year or two ago. He interned all over the place. Phenomenal internships. And it shows because the amount of information that he has, but the way that he's able to deliver that information. And it shows because he was at the University of Minnesota. He was at North Texas. He was at SMU. Like, he's had some really good internships all over the place. So don't be afraid to intern. Don't be afraid to work for free for a little bit and while you're gaining that knowledge, and make the most out of it. I had a story. There was a guy from MTSU. He was an undergraduate student, and he got an internship at the University of Florida back when Mariotti was there. And Urban Meyer was there, and he had a spring internship. His last semester before he got his bachelor's degree. Mm-hmm. And they offered him 3 different times to be a full-time strength coach, and he turned it down 3 times. On the 4th time, they offered double what they offered the first time, and he ended up taking it. So these internships can platform you for the rest of your career, because now he's going to be a full-time strength coach in the football program at the University of Florida back when they were winning national titles. So never turn down an internship. Always be looking for them, because there's a lot of really good strength coaches to learn from.
You touched on something I want to go to, because I thought it was just very profound, right? You talked about it being not doing it for the glory, not being it's almost like a thankless job, but you need to approach it, like you were saying, with a sense of gratitude, right? You're coming to these different programs and you're identifying gaps and not trying to say like, hey, you're doing this, and this wrong, but I see that we could be doing this. Here's what I would do to, make sure we're checking A, B, and C that are currently gaps within our system that would make us stronger. Here's where I see where the output is, right? Taking that, and you just, that's what you just went through. You were talking about.
Yeah. And we do so much, and we have the ability to do so much, because we have to know so much. We have to know so much. Whereas a sports science guy, they're looking at analytically, looking at some numbers on a page. We're looking at the person, we're looking at the sport, we're looking at the competition, we're looking at everything, and we're problem solvers. So we're just trying to solve a problem. And sometimes coaches they solve problems, but they're small problems. Because think about it, as a strength coach, what do? You want to look at, when do I need them at their strongest, healthiest, most explosive? And then you work backwards, right? So you're trying to make a plan. And a lot of coaches don't work like that. I need a plan. Well, where do you want this athlete to be in 2 or 3 months? What are you doing to get them there? What kind of movements are we doing to get them there? And so I think it's just different perspectives that we're trying to give.
Right. Absolutely. What haven't we talked about, right? You've talked about having identified people with juice, manning your post, not doing it for the glory. Like we've covered such a great range, and I can't thank you enough, because this has just been phenomenal. But what else do you want to talk about that hasn't been said in our conversation?
I'm gonna give a plug to my baseball players real quick, because we give baseball players a lot of crap, right? Because from the other sports, especially from a track background, we all look at baseball as, okay, yeah, they're athletes, but you just hit, and you don't have to be real athletic to play baseball. Like you look at basketball, football, soccer, like really athletic sports, but we don't realize that the skill level for baseball is really high. And when I say that we play 140 games in 152 days, those are games. Those aren't including the 3-hour workouts that we do before the game, and then the weight room session that we do before practice, or the after game workout that we have to do. Like, these guys really work. And I don't think we say that enough. Because even though the sport itself, like if you go play a baseball game, yeah, if you're playing at a high intensity, you could be tired, but most of us don't. We could play for all day baseball if we wanted to, but these guys really grind. And I wish they'd get a little bit more love for the amount of work that they put in, because they put in a lot of work, and they don't complain, and they just go out there and they grind. And I don't know if you know this, but Alabama gets a little warm. So when it's 102 degrees outside and they're out there still practicing, playing, all that stuff, I just want to show my guys some love.
No, that's awesome. That's a great spot to, and unfortunately I don't want to end it. But I couldn't think of a better spot, just giving love to the athletes, because like you said, they are busting their hump all the time. And we got to give some love to the baseball players. I respect that.
There you go.
Carlos, brother, thank you so much for your time. This has been a masterclass.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. This is actually my first podcast, or my first interview. So super nervous. So
stop.
Yeah.
So, I thought I was talking to Robin Roberts, like this was Good Morning America. Like you, like seriously, to give a baseball analogy, knocked it out of the park.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And
I thought you had notes prepared. Like, I'm being serious.
No, you're easy to talk to. So I really enjoyed it.
Game recognizes game.
There you go. There you go. But anytime you need me, I'm right here.
Yeah. Same. We'll be in touch. And again, thank you for everything.